Hey, Patrick. We're right at 6 o'clock, so I'm going to check who's helping us this evening. Is it Erica?
Yes,
Do we have a quorum, Erica?
I am double checking,
Okay.
and it looks
Yes.
like we do. Yes, we do.
Okay, wonderful. Let's go ahead and get started. Then I'm going to call us to order and see if perhaps Patrick will help us with the pledge this evening.
Absolutely. Ready, begin. I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag of
Allegiance
the United
to
States
the
of
flag
America,
to America,
the States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
which it
and
stands,
for which stands
under
one
God,
nation, under
indivisible,
God,
free,
indivisible,
for all.
with liberty and justice for all. I like the flag, Liz.
that sounds almost as good as you'd expect it to.
All right, then with that, let's go ahead and ask for a roll call.
Sure, Director Craig,
Here.
Director Collin,
I'm here.
Director Jimenez,
Here,
Director Phillips. Looks like is absent. Director Rocha is absent. Director Silva,
Present.
alternate Vice President Tipton,
Present.
and Vice President Cromines,
Here.
and President Lopez.
Here. All right. Then with that, I'm going to go ahead and make an announcement about translation services. Si necesita la ayuda de traducción esta tarde, por favor, llama al número 1-425-436-6345. Ahí puedes poner un código de acceso que es 444-666, otra vez 444-666, y les ayudan con traducción. Gracias. All right. With that, I just want to share with the board this evening, I'm going to take a little chair's prerogative here and move our closed session to right after the consent agenda. Again, just giving everybody a heads up, I'm going to rearrange the agenda and put closed session after our consent agenda, and then we'll come back for our action items. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and take us to our general manager CAO comments.
I have nothing tonight. We have a lot of things to talk about, so you'll hear a lot from me already. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. Then we'll go to department manager comments. I'll take silence. There's nothing to add, so we'll go ahead and keep rolling. Board of Director comments. Is there any members of the board who wish to make comments this evening? Seeing no hands, quiet bunch, we're rolling. All right, then we're going to go into our public comment period, which is an opportunity for the public to share comments regarding items not on tonight's agenda. We ask that folks use a raise hand function to be recognized. We ask that you keep your comment to 2 minutes if you can. We appreciate you self-monitoring that. And we'll go ahead and start with Kristen Scromey. Kristen, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I wanted to share that we're planning to host a cleanup in King City, the 1st of 2021, and it is scheduled a month from now. It's going to be October 16th at Salinas Valley Fairgrounds. We do have a new location, as our old location has a building on it, King City High School. So we encourage you to take a look at what you have in your garage now, look at what you want to get rid of and save the date and come take a visit. And then King City in Bloom is hosting their litter pickup that they normally host at the same time. So if you'd like to go pick up litter, we'd love to see you and share a cup of coffee. So come visit us at our new location. We really look forward to seeing you all out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristen. We look forward to that cleanup. If you haven't yet, can you send that flyer maybe to staff to distribute to the board? Be appreciated.
Will do. Thanks.
Thank you, Kristen. All right. Just going to ask, just in case there's anybody on the phone, *9 will also raise your hand and let us know you wish to be recognized. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion of tonight's agenda and head into our proclamations. So I'm going to go ahead and kick those over to Patrick for presentation.
Yeah, I'm just going to say a few brief words and then actually turn it over to Caesar to speak to these two great long-term staff who are retiring this month. So we usually do this when we have retirements, so we don't have too many. We're still a fairly young agency, but I just want to personally thank. I know both of them are on the attendees list if they'd like to speak when we're finished. But Juan Vasquez and Roberto Correa, who have been longtime operators for the authority, working at Johnson Canyon, and you know, they're two diligent guys that show up every day and work incredibly hard, and they have been very committed employees, and it's going to be sad to see them go. But as with all retirements, there is a golden egg at the end of that, and that's that you get to spend the rest of your well-earned years retired and doing things you like to do. So I wish them both the best in their retirements, and I'd like to turn it over to Caesar for his comments as well.
Yes, good evening, Board of Directors. So yeah, both Juan Vasquez and Roberto Correa have been a crucial part of our team over at the Johnson Canyon landfill. They came on board with the authority in December of 2014 as heavy equipment operators, and they came over from the old Recology agreement that the authority took over and started operating in-house. I've had the honor of actually, I've been at our sites since 1995, and when I got there, Juan Vasquez was already an operator at the Crazy Horse landfill, and Juan's been around our landfills, specifically Crazy Horse, Lewis Road, and Johnson Canyon since 1988. So, and Roberto Correa came to us in 1998. And he's worked at our closed landfills, which is Lewis Road landfill, as well as Crazy Horse landfill, and then they transferred over to the Johnson Canyon landfill. So it's been definitely an honor for myself to work with both of those gentlemen. They're great people, great mentors. You know, me as a young guy, when I came in and I met Juan, he gave me real good advice. And I am going to miss both of them. Great operators. I wish them well in their retirement. And, you know, with that, I'll hand it back over to Patrick for the proclamations. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I don't know if you want to read the proclamation, Caesar, or would you like me to do that? I'd be happy to.
Either way.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead. So this is a proclamation for Juan Vasquez. Whereas one day in 1988, a gentleman named Juan Vasquez was hired by Salinas Disposal Service to work at the Crazy Horse landfill. And whereas Mr. Vasquez' solid waste career began picking up litter and quickly was promoted to driving a compactor and scraper, and unknowingly to Mr. Vasquez, Crazy Horse landfill would become his place of employment until its closure in 2009. Whereas during his employment at the Crazy Horse landfill, Mr. Vasquez also occasionally assisted at the Lewis Road landfill and the Johnson Canyon landfill. And whereas after the closure of the Crazy Horse landfill, Mr. Vasquez was transferred over to the Johnson Canyon landfill, at the time being operated by Recology. And whereas on December 22nd, 2014, the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority assumed the operations of the Johnson Canyon landfill. And whereas the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority takes pride in hiring the best of the best. And on December 22nd, 2014, Mr. Vasquez joined the authority team as a full-time heavy equipment operator. And whereas Mr. Vasquez, who wholeheartedly embraced the authority's mission and vision and values, shared his knowledge and experience to ensure day-to-day operations and projects were completed efficiently and in a timely manner. And his contributions to the authority included assisting in the training of other heavy equipment operators, leaving some of his knowledge and experience with the agency. And whereas during his employment with the authority, Mr. Vasquez has been instrumental in the successful operation of the Johnson Canyon landfill. And whereas for the aforementioned and much more, Mr. Vasquez's friendliness, dedication, professionalism will be greatly missed by his colleagues and staff. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority hereby recognizes Mr. Juan Vasquez for his exemplary contributions to the authority's mission, vision, and values, and wishes him well in all his future endeavors. Thank you, Juan. Juan, if you'd like to say something, you can raise your hand. If you don't wish to speak, that's fine too, but you have that opportunity if you're still on the line. Doesn't look like you're still on the line, so. Any other words from board members or staff about Juan's retirement?
Juan, on behalf of the staff, just want to thank you for your contributions. For somebody that's been with this agency as long as you have, we're proud of the agency that we get to help guide, but it's nothing without those of you who made it the incredible agency that it is today. As I've shared with all of you, when folks go to our facilities, the first compliment I always get is on the people, how friendly they are, how helpful they are. And that's really it's an ethos. It's a way that people carry themselves. It started with you guys, and you've been here so long. You helped develop that seed into the plant it is today, an incredible organization that our entire organization, our entire leadership is proud of, but we wouldn't be that without you. So thank you for your contributions, your mentorship, and for leaving us with such a strong team. Your contributions will be missed, but we know that you're leaving us in great hands with the team that you've helped build.
Thank you. All right. Maybe we could move on then to Roberto Correa. Caesar, would you like to read this one?
Yes. So a proclamation honoring Roberto Correa. Whereas one day in 1998, a gentleman named Roberto Correa was hired by Salinas Disposal Service to work at the Lewis Road landfill, shortly after moving over to the Crazy Horse landfill. And whereas Mr. Correa's solid waste career began driving a compactor and scraper, unknowingly to Mr. Correa, Crazy Horse would become his place of employment until his closure in 2009. And whereas after the closure of the Crazy Horse landfill, Mr. Correa was transferred over to the Johnson Canyon landfill, at that time being operated by Recology. And whereas on December 22nd, 2014, the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority assumed the operations of the Johnson Canyon landfill. And whereas the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority takes pride in hiring the best of the best. And on December 22nd, 2014, Mr. Correa joined the authority's team as a full-time heavy equipment operator. And whereas Mr. Correa has enthusiastically embraced the authority's mission, vision, values, shared his knowledge and experience, and ensured day-to-day operations and specific projects were completed efficiently and in a timely manner. And whereas during his employment with the authority, Mr. Correa has been instrumental in significant projects such as successful construction of the organics pad expansion, setting grade to ensure drainage and fill operations, the groundwork of the installation of the depackager, the excavation of the Johnson Canyon Landfill Module 7, which resulted in significant cost savings for the agency. And whereas Mr. Correa's other significant contributions to the authority include assisting in the training of other heavy equipment operators, leaving some of his skills and experience within the agency and suggesting a road safety visibility program for walkers, joggers, and bikers along Johnson Canyon Road that the city of Gonzales has agreed to implement. And whereas for the aforementioned and much more, Mr. Correa's dedication, professionalism, and friendliness will be greatly missed by his colleagues and staff. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority hereby recognizes Mr. Roberto Correa for his exemplary contributions to the authority's mission, vision, and values, and wishes him well in all his future endeavors. So, Robert, from the bottom of my heart, I really want to say thank you to you. You've been a trooper out there. You've been a go-to guy out there. Robert is very enthusiastic. He's very dedicated. He's probably one of the most, how should I say this? Got OCD. He has to make sure the grade is perfect. Robert takes great pleasure and great dedication in his job, and he wants to make sure it's done right. So from myself and the operations staff, we're definitely going to miss Roberto. And I want to thank you for all the years of service you've had with our landfills, the authority, and personally myself, knowing you for the past 23 years you've been a great example and a leader at our facility. So thank you.
Erica,
And I
maybe we
believe-
could give Roberto the ability to speak. Perfect.
I am trying to move him over, but for some reason it's not allowing me. Ernesto.
He's
Oh
over.
yeah, it's not
He's
allowing
over
him
now.
either.
He's
It looks
he's
like he's
already
over
a
now.
panelist.
There we go.
Can you unmute him?
No, he would have to unmute himself.
We can hear you now, Roberto.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a few words. And it's been a pleasure working with this team, and it's been an honor spending all this time in this operation. And I know that I'm gonna miss, all this time that I spent with you guys. And I think I'll still be visiting you guys. I won't be gone too long, but I just thank you, everyone. It's kind of like ironic that both of my friend, my coworker Juan, we have to retire at this point, and that's pretty much. I have a lot of words that I just can't even bring out at this point. But thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. Patrick, any other words for us?
No, you're really going to be missed, Roberto. I hear nothing but good things from your coworkers about you as well, and that quiet dedication to work is something we like to see instilled in all of our employees, and you're the epitome of that. And so you're going to be missed. Thank you for everything you've done for this agency. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Roberto. Also, on behalf of all the constituents, I know you're a South County guy, so we appreciate all that you put in for our people. And looking at the list here, it looks like you're going out with a bang, knowing that we've got AB 1383 breathing down our neck. Your name is going to be on all those big projects, the depackager, the organics facility. So again, you're leaving us in a position to grow into the future. So thank you for everything that you've done for us, but we know you're not going to be too far away. And we look forward to seeing you out in the community as you enjoy your retirement. Thank you, Roberto. Okay. Well, with those wrapped, I think at this point, do we need to pass those resolutions, Patrick, at this point?
Surgical and medical group calling to remind Ray of an appointment at 3:30 p.m.
Yes, I believe we do.
Okay, so at this point, I'll see if we have any public comment on our two ceremonial resolutions this evening. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for board action.
Motion to approve both resolutions today. And thank you both for your service.
And I'll second that. This is Drew.
Okay, motion from Cromine, second from Tipton. Can we go ahead and get a roll call vote, please?
Director Craig,
Aye.
Director Colin,
I'll vote aye and add my gratitude and thanks.
Director Jimenez,
And thank you for your service to both of you.
Director Phillips,
Aye, and I concur. Thank you. Hardworking man.
Director Rocha,
Yes, and also thank you for your years of service.
Director Silva,
Aye, and I also wanted to say thank you for your service and enjoy your retirement.
Alternate Vice President Tipton,
Aye, and I'll follow along with everybody else. Thank you for your years of effort putting in, making the authority what it is, and enjoy your retirement.
Vice President Cromines,
Yes.
and President Lopez.
We're in your debt. Enjoy your retirement, and that's a yes. Thank you so much. All right, with those proclamations approved, we're going to head into our consent agenda. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up and see if we have any public members wishing to pull an item from our consent agenda this evening. See no hands going up. I'll bring it back and see if there's any directors who wish to pull an item from our consent agenda this evening. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to move the consent agenda.
Move consent, Phillips.
Second,
Motion.
Silva.
Motion from Phillips, second from Silva. Roll call vote, please.
Director Craig,
Aye.
Director Cullen,
Aye.
Director Jimenez,
Yes.
Director Phillips,
Aye.
Director Rocha,
Yes.
Director Silva,
Aye.
alternate Vice President Tipton,
Aye.
Vice President Cromines,
Yes.
President Lopez.
Yes, motion carries. So with that, we are going to recess to closed session for our directors. If you check your email, you should have received midday today an email from Erica with the proper links. If you'll take me back real quick to the agenda item and take me down to the closed session items, Erica. We're going to go ahead and open up for public comment on our closed session items before we go to closed session. And so this evening, there are items 13 and 14, which are laid out in front of us on the screen. If there's a member of the public who wishes to make a comment on our closed session agenda, now is the appropriate time. See no hands going up, we'll close the closed session agenda, public comment portion, and recess to closed session. We will plan to reconvene in, what do you say, Patrick, 20 minutes, roughly?
Yeah, 15 to 30, could be less, but yeah, no longer 30 minutes.
I have a quick question here.
Yes.
The agenda has closed session at the end. Maybe I got here late, so maybe that was
I
mentioned.
rearranged it at the top of the agenda.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got here late. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and head to closed session. Again, those agendas, the links for board members should have been in your email around midday today in an email from Erica. So we're now gonna recess to closed session. Thank you. I'm just missing Drew. Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay, let's give him a
And
few more seconds here.
yes, we're also missing Director Silva.
Silva's there,
Oh, no,
upper
she's
left-hand
here.
corner.
Just
For
found
me.
her.
We see you, Liz. Don't worry. You're not invisible. Okay, I see Drew. Let's go ahead and get a roll call as we reconvene into open session.
Director Craig? Director Craig? Looks like she is here, but she's can't unmute herself. So. Director Collin?
I'm here.
Director Jimenez? Director Phillips?
Here.
Director Rocha?
Here.
Director Silva? Here. Alternate Vice President Tipton?
Here.
Vice President Cromines?
Here.
And President Lopez.
Here. All right. Thank you all. We welcome back the public. I'm going to turn and ask. Oh. Kimberly's got a delay on audio there. Echo,
Can you hear me?
Do you have two audio sources going, Kimberly?
Probably. Hang on.
Let's try that.
Is that better?
We're still there. Still got an echo. All right. Do us a favor and just mute for now. All right. So I'm going to turn and see if General Counsel Roy Santos. Sorry, I don't know if that's a promotion or demotion there, Counsel, but I'll go ahead and ask you to give us anything you might need to read out of closed session if that's true.
There's nothing to announce out at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. With that, we're going to jump back into our presentations portion of this agenda. If Erica would do me a favor and scroll up to that portion, we'll start with the first, which is an annual franchise hauler performance report. Elia Zavala will be performing that presentation. So Elia, the floor is yours.
Can you all hear me?
We can.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Elia Zavala. I'm the Contracts and Grants Analyst. I'll be presenting to you tonight the Haulers Performance Report for 2020. Let's see, Erica, do I have the screen or?
No, Ernesto does. So you can just tell him next slide.
Okay, hold on just a second.
Well, we're seeing the presenter's view right now.
Are we waiting for the PowerPoint? I don't see it anymore.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Ellie,
Ernesto.
that's me.
Oh, okay. All right. That was me. And there it is again. All right, Well, again, good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm Elia Zavala. I'll be going over the haulers performance report for 2020. Next slide. So every year we provide this information to the board and to the public. It's the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority is the contract administrator for the Tri-Cities Disposal and Recycling franchise with the cities of Gonzales, Soledad, and Greenfield. And we all are also the contract administrators for the Waste Management franchise agreement with the city of King. So every year we go over the data, the collection, tonnage information from the hauler and how they did in 2020. Next slide. We go over each of the collection services for recycling, organics, and trash for both residential customers as well as commercial customers. Next slide. And before we get started with looking at the tonnage and the material that was collected by the waste haulers, just wanted to give a quick overview of the changes in customer counts for both Tri-Cities and Waste Management, as that could be a factor in the changes in the collection services. In 2020, Tri-Cities Disposal, if you could follow the chart there in the teal green, their commercial customer count increased a good healthy amount for 943 customers compared to last year. They had 914 residents. They increased about 100 for the total of the 3 cities for a 1% average increase overall. Waste Management down at the bottom of the table in the light green. Commercial customers decreased for Waste Management in King City slightly, and residential customers increased by about 100. So their total average was about a 4% increase for their customers. Next slide. Okay, so this is, we'll dive into the data on tonnage from the residential sector. Waste Management collected almost 6,000 tons. They achieved a 13% diversion in mixed recycling and 22% in green waste collection for an average diversion of 35%. And this is for residential customers. And Tri-Cities on the pie chart below collected 20,876 tons from the cities of Gonzales, Soledad, and Greenfield. Now they diverted a little bit more. Their recycling was 19% and green waste collection was 23%. Next slide. Okay, so same data, just taking a look at the past 3 years and how the trends have changed. We could see Tri-Cities in the teal green. Their increase, they had increases in all collection types. They had in recycling, they had an 11% increase from 2019. Green waste increased 14%. And trash increased 10%. Like Waste Management as well, they had increases in all their collection sectors, their collection services. So Waste Management in the light green had 22% increase in recycling, 8% increase in waste, in green waste, and an 11% increase in trash. And this is expected, as you know, a lot of us have spent a lot of time at home in 2020. So there was an expected increase in the residential collection services. Next slide. Okay, same data, now looking at the commercial businesses. Waste Management in King City had collected 5,464 tons, and they diverted 10% of that was mixed recycling, 4% was green waste, and this is in businesses. Now, Tri-Cities collected 15,729 tons from the cities of Gonzales, Soledad, and Greenfield. 9% of that was mixed recycling and 9% was green waste. Now, that tonnage is usually, diversion rates are usually lower for commercial sector. So that's still the way it's been in the past couple of years. Next slide. So we'll take a look at the data again, same chart, looking at the data over 3 years. You can see for commercial businesses, there was a, we'll start with the teal, which is Tri-Cities disposal. In recycling, they saw a 10% reduction. In green waste, they had a 38% increase, a pretty good increase in that collection. And then trash, can't see it on the screen, let me bring that up, had an increase of 8%. Waste management had decreases in all areas for commercial businesses. The recycling decreased by 32%, green waste decreased 21%, and trash decreased 13% for their commercial businesses. So there was a trend, it was expected. In waste management, as you can see, there was a decrease because a lot of businesses were closed. Tri-Cities, interestingly, had an increase in green waste, and could be because there has been a lot of efforts in bringing some of the businesses in compliance with AB 1826. I'm sorry, getting mixed up with my numbers. To bring them into compliance to divert their green waste. So that may be a contributing factor to their increase. Great, next slide. Okay, so a diversion summary. Over the years, Tri-Cities disposal, their residential diversion increased 1% from last year, and commercial is the same. So there's an overall 31% diversion for Tri-Cities area in terms of diversion. Now, waste management had a slight increase as well in residential diversion, a 1% increase from last year, and commercial stayed the same as well, for an overall diversion of 25% overall. Next slide. Okay, so what does that mean for us as Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority? We prepare an annual report to CalRecycle, and the collection data from the haulers becomes part of this report. So this is how we measured up this past year in terms of diversion. The total waste generation rate is provided by the state. They give us this number to be measured against. It's they tell us that each person is estimated to generate 12.4 pounds of waste per day. So in order to meet the AB 939 diversion target, we need to divert 6.2 pounds of that estimated generated waste in order to meet the 50% diversion mandate. So here's a comparison from the past 3 years on how the authority has done as a region on diversion efforts. In 2020, we diverted 54% as a region, as regional agency, and which means that an average of 5.7 pounds per person per day were generated in terms of waste. So we are still in compliance. We want this gray box to come down lower, but it's slowly going the other direction. There's a lot more waste being generated, and likely because of different, education for recycling right, maybe changing things in the diversion sector, but with additional efforts with SB 1383, we expect diversion rates to increase over the next couple of years. So overall, we as a region, 54% diversion. We are within the minimum percent, the 50% minimum requirement. Next slide. Here's just a quick snapshot. As everybody knows, 2020, there's a lot of things that were placed on hold, especially as it relates to community outreach and one-on-one person interaction. But the haulers were able to do some outreach last year before COVID shelter-in-place orders took into effect. But most of the outreach was done through social media and newsprint. And there were some surveys that were conducted by both haulers. And this was mostly to focus on AB 1826 and start, helping businesses sign up for their required service for organics collection. The smart truck was rolled out for residential customers, waste management in King City. That's also going to be a very important component for SB 1383 compliance, as they are going to be inspecting, assisting with the enforcement and compliance with organics recycling. There was virtual trainings as much as they could possibly do, but most of it was on hold as far as community cleanup events. Next slide. Oh, I think I forgot to mention on the previous slide, there was also last year food waste collection pilot project started in in Greenfield. Tri-Cities started that pilot project. Tri-Cities was generous enough to offer food waste collection services at no cost as an incentive for businesses to sign up for the service. So that's up and going. And now all the South County cities now have are participating in the program. Waste Management just rolled that out in February this year to get the program going. They also did offer the service at no cost to the King City businesses. Next slide. Okay, here's just a quick snapshot on the compliance rate, where the Tri-Cities disposals and waste management are helping businesses sign up and be in compliance with the different mandates. AB 341 is a mandatory business recycling for mixed recycling, and 98% of businesses for Tri-Cities are in compliance. Multifamily complexes also are, a lot of them are in compliance. They have a 96% compliance rate. And AB 1826 is the mandatory organics or green waste recycling for businesses. In Tri-Cities area, 71% of the businesses are in compliance. They had a huge increase in compliance. And multifamily complexes are 87% in compliance. So overall, these numbers look very good. And waste management, as you can see down in the lighter green, mandatory recycling for businesses is 74% in compliance. Multifamily complexes, 79%. Businesses for the organics, the green waste recycling is 5%. It's up, not as far as we would like to see it yet, but it's a work in progress. Multifamily complexes are 32% of them are in compliance with the green waste recycling. Next slide. So these are just a couple of highlights. The haulers are meeting their obligations for the franchise agreements with their cities. Their residential tonnages all increased, as we saw, due to residents being home mostly last year. Commercial recycling decreased. Mandate compliance progress is on its way. It's doing well. The food waste collection pilot project is underway with Tri-Cities and now with Waste Management. They will be starting to charge businesses or start their service fees in January, I believe. The residential smart truck is up and going in King City. And for regional diversion compliance, we are as a region at 54% diversion. And next slide. All right, that concludes my presentation. I know it's a lot of data and numbers, but I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. And I believe representatives from the waste haulers are also here. They said they would. So, but if there are any questions, we'll try to answer.
Thank you, Elia. And we don't worry, we memorized it all. That's what we're good at. One quick question for you. In terms of the reduction in diversion, can any of that be correlated with the China sword?
It could be, because less and less items are being able to be recycled, and that's where the haulers are, increasingly educating the public on what is and what is not recyclable. And there's also the What Goes Where app, where encourage business residents to see what is divertible. That could be definitely a factor.
Great, thank you. Any questions from board members? All right, seeing none, we'll take it out to the public, see if we have any public input at this point. See no hands going up, we'll bring it back. And Patrick, I saw your hand up, so it was an old school hand, but we'll throw it to you.
It's a new hand. I just wanted to add a little bit to your question about China sword. One of the challenges we've had in the industry right now, I know as the current chapter president for our local chapter of SWANA, it's a legislative issue we're working on all the time. We're not going to increase recycling until we set standards for imported materials. Because I know, just on a personal, I buy something from Amazon, it comes from China, it's full of styrofoam, it's full of non-recyclable plastics. So until we have a universal packaging law that's applied not just to US businesses, which are impacted by higher costs because they have to comply with these rules and make things recyclable when they package things and build things. But so much of what we get is coming from outside the US, and those standards don't apply. So I can just tell you, I just bought a little side table and just threw away a whole bunch of styrofoam and a whole bunch of film plastic and some really cruddy cardboard that was packaged in. That while it's technically recyclable, I think when it goes into the recycling process, it will disintegrate. So that's the challenge we have as a country, I think, in recycling is to increase recycling. We have to change, we have to push for extended producer responsibility, both imports and domestic. So ongoing challenge for our industry right now.
Thank you, Patrick. Any other comments or questions from directors or family pugs? All right, hearing none. Elia, thank you for that presentation. We appreciate you keeping us up to date on the latest. We know that those numbers change every year. It's one of the presentations I look forward to, so thank you. All right, and with that, let's roll forward, and we're going to go to Caesar for our Employee of the Year recognitions.
All right. Good evening again, Board of Directors. This evening, I have the honor of presenting our Employee of the Year. The Employee of the Year award is nominated by the employees, so they're nominated by their peers, and it comes to the management team. We review the nominees, and then we take a blind vote. So this year, like everyone else, we have so many impacts. So much happened over the past year, and the management team felt that we had two very worthy employees. So we decided to hand out two awards this year. They were both honored recently at our communication lunches. Thank you to Director Phillips and Director Lopez, who both attended one of the lunches and joined us for lunch to honor the employees. And that pretty much took place of our annual dinner, which we couldn't have due to COVID. The Employee of the Year nomination is made by the employees, and once voted by the management team, we've got to keep ourselves tight-lipped and make sure nobody finds out. So this year, it was a difficult task, but we were able to pull it off. This year's honorees, like in the past year's honorees, are very deserving of the award. COVID had many impacts countywide and especially on our operation. One of the recipients assisted in the completion of numerous projects over the past 12 months, which included landfill gas collection system improvements at Johnson Canyon, concrete footings and foundation work for the organics receiving area, installation of the perimeter fence at Johnson Canyon, and maintenance of our closed landfills, not to mention the regular maintenance and repair required throughout all of our facilities. He has a very easygoing personality and is always willing to assist if able. He and his fellow solid waste techs pushed through difficult times and made sure that the task got completed on time and under budget. Our second recipient was also very busy following up and researching and implementing the ever-challenging regulations that came with COVID. Local orders, state orders, federal orders being mandated due to worldwide pandemic. This was a full-time job. She also tackles COVID exposures and work with management and supervisors to make sure we understood what steps we had to implement and mandate to keep us all and kept us all up to speed. She worked directly with employees who had questions on exposures, symptoms, and also found and shared testing locations and made sure we got signed up for vaccines as an agency. And she booked the appointments and found vaccine locations for staff, which made it very easy for us just to take our appointment and walk over and get vaccinated, all while also handling her day-to-day tasks related to HR, such as injuries, payroll, and insurance questions. Both did an outstanding job, not only for the agency, but for our employees who rely on both their assistance with their respective jobs. So this year's honorees as employees of the year are Oscar Garcia, a solid waste tech, and Monica Ambris, our HR supervisor. And I believe they are both joining us on, I believe they're both on YouTube listening in. So I want to say thank you to both of them. They've done a great job over the past year. I think Oscar does a lot of our construction jobs and he's very dependable and he just pushed through this whole past year with COVID. We've all experienced the challenges that come with COVID. And Oscar's just was there. He worked on task. We had a number of projects during COVID. So we're short materials, just like everybody else. There was shortage of labor and help due to COVID, people being out with COVID or exposures. And then Monica did a great job because really the managers, the supervisors, and the management team overall leaned on her for keeping us up with the ever-changing landscape that came with COVID and regulations, and we're opening, not opening, we need this document, require that document. And she was very helpful to all the employees as they called in with questions on potential exposures or I have symptoms, what do we do? And then when the vaccines came out, she also led the charge by finding us clinics where we can all go get vaccinated and making the appointments for us and just pretty much channeling the employees to these facilities to make sure we get vaccinated. So thank you to both Oscar Garcia and Monica Ambris. They are our employees of the year for year 2021. So that I know that I don't think they can log on or because I think they're on YouTube, but if they can hear me, I want to say thank you from the management team and all the staff. You guys rock, man. Thank you.
Patrick, any thoughts?
1,000 thoughts, but I can tell you just, knowing Oscar in particular and watching him work, I mean, that guy is, he's stellar. I've just never seen somebody work so hard and he really stays on top of task. He works for Brian Kennedy, our environmental compliance and engineering manager. And along with his team, he is, he's a huge asset. And one of the reasons we always come back with our annual report and we talk about cost saving projects. Most of those projects end up being projects that Oscar and the other solid waste techs were part of. And that's really important to acknowledge the work they do because not only are they good employees, but they actually save the authority a lot of money. Taking on projects that a lot of agencies might contract out with. We do some of those in-house and it gives us control, allows us to get projects done a lot faster, and it does save a lot of money. Monica, I know you're listening out there. I told you this before, but I couldn't have got through COVID without you. Really, she and I and Caesar in particular, the three of us talked almost every day, especially during the peak of the pandemic. She was always the one that stayed on top of the changes, because you all know things were changing, sometimes daily, sometimes hourly. We'd get one directive and it would be changed, and another organization would say something different. And she really helped us get through that. And she helped keep the entire workforce very safe. And we weathered that storm, I think, better than most, because of the work that she did, helping keep us coordinated. And as Caesar said, on top of her normal day job, which is running HR services for the agency. So thank you to both of those employees for the great work they did. And they're very, very deserving of this recognition tonight.
Monica and Oscar, we salute you. It's getting Employee of the Year is a big deal, but getting it during COVID, I mean, really, you had to shine in order to stand out, because so many people stepped up and really showed what the organization can do given a crisis. And you guys were perfect examples of what's possible. And you led with your heart, and you helped us get through an incredibly difficult time in your own ways. And so we're extremely appreciative for all your efforts, and know that now it's only up from here. So next year we demand double. Just kidding. You guys are incredible. Thank you for all that you've done, and congratulations upon being recognized by your peers as Employees of the Year. Any other directors wish to make comments? All right, and we'll go ahead and keep going. Congratulations again to you both. Next up on our agenda, move this out of the way. We have the discussion on potential for bond refinancing. We're going to kick that over to Ray Hendricks for a presentation.
And I'm actually going to hand this off to John Fan of the company group. He assisted with the 2014 refinance, and just to give a precursor, I wasn't aware that this was an option. Our bonds are technically not callable for another 3 years. But Monterey Regional, because the interest rates are so low, Monterey Regional is doing something similar. So Patrick asked me to reach out and see what the options were for us. So I will hand this over to John, who will present the two options for the board to consider. And we'll await feedback from the board afterwards.
Okay.
So I know John was in the audience. He is a panelist. So it's all yours, John.
Hey, thank you, Ray. Appreciate it. Good evening, Board President Lopez, and good evening, board members. My name is John Fan. I'm from Company Lee Group. I'm a municipal advisor. I also worked on your 2014 bond transaction. If you can go to the next page. Just a summary of your prior bonds. So in 2014, you issued $31.4 million to refinance your prior 2002 bonds and also pay back your Crazy Horse loans. And back in 2002, you financed improvements for your various landfills. So right now, you have about $23 million outstanding. The outstanding interest rate of those bonds is about 5.45%. So relatively high to what the current rates are. The final maturity is 2031, so 10 years, relatively short. And like what Ray said, they can be prepaid in 2024. There is a unique tax law provision that doesn't allow you to refinance on a tax-exempt basis until 2024. However, because rates are so low, we're at all-time low rates, many agencies have issued taxable interest rates at extremely low rates as well to refinance their tax-exempt debt. Today, if you did a refinancing bond to refinance your 2014 bonds, the interest rate will be about 1.65%. That's a savings of about 4% on your existing debt. And I can review on the next few pages the annual savings. But first, I want to review your 2014 annual payment requirements. So you're paying about $3.1 million right now through 2027 it dips to, goes a little lower to 2.9 in 2028, and then it levels out at $2.7 million thereafter. So your total debt payments total about $30 million for the remaining life. So you go to the next page. So the first refinancing option that we show here is a level savings, meaning that you save the same amount every single year. So if you look at column A, that is what you're paying now, about $3.1 million right now, like I said earlier. And then with a refinancing at 1.65% in the current market, your annual debt payments will be reduced to about $3 million. Column C is the annual savings. You can see the annual savings is about $120,000 a year through the maturity. As you can see, we're not extending maturity. We're leaving the maturity the same right now. In terms of present value, we present value all that stream back. That present value is about $1.1 million. That's column D. So that means that if you had projects, let's say you had a project that cost $1 million, you could technically raise $1 million and still pay the same amount. So that's what that present value is saving. So that is option one, where there's level savings. And this is net of all fees. As you can look at the sources and uses, we're raising funds to refinance the bonds, the escrow fund, and also pay the cost of issuance. So this is all net savings analysis right here. The next option we show on page 5 is to shorten the life of your outstanding bonds by 1 year. Right now, you're budgeting about $3.1 million. So what we said was, let's continue that payment of $3.1 million through 2031, right? So if you keep that payment of $3.1 million, you can chop off a year. You can really shorten your maturity by 1 year, right? So that total annual savings is going to be around $1.4 million. Like if you look at column C, the present value is still going to be around $1.1 million. So this option, what we're trying to do here is just shorten your life of your bonds by 1 year. The refunding mechanics is relatively simple. You issue 2022 bonds. The bond financing process takes about 4 or 5 months. And what it does is it establishes 2 funds. One is the escrow fund, which will be provided to a trustee. And then in 2024, when the bonds are prepayable, they will pay off the bonds, the 2014 bonds. The other fund is to pay the cost of issuance of the various financing team members. One of the questions that a finance committee or a committee member asked was, what are the risks of doing this financing right now? The risk is, let's say in 4 or 5 months, rates for some reason shoot up like significantly, and there's no savings results. Would there be any liability for the authority by proceeding with this refinancing? There is a small risk. Most of the financing team, about 95% of the financing team, works on a contingency basis. So if the financing does not get complete, nobody pays. But there's one finance team member that does not get paid on a contingent basis. That is the rating agency, the credit agency. A credit agency is very similar to when you receive a FICO score, a credit score. So when you receive a credit score, they provide the credit assessment. So we use Standard & Poor's previously, and usually they do not work on a contingent basis. But what we'll try to do is we'll engage that credit agency later in the process, and we'll monitor the market before we do so. And that cost is probably $35,000, $40,000. But by that time, we'll monitor the market, and obviously we can hold on that rating for a long time, and we can monitor the market if rates go up and down in the future. So that's all of my presentation. This is just municipal. I'm regulated by the SEC and the MSRB, so I have to provide disclosures to you.
Thank you, John. All right, let's see. Anything you want to add in addition, Ray?
No, just can answer any questions that the board has. And really what we're looking for is just the approval from the board to proceed and start the process, and recommendation on which of the two options the board prefers. And I know at EC I was asked which one I prefer, so I'm going to go ahead and let the board know I prefer the shortening of the debt service, but paying it off a year earlier. But that is up to the board to decide. Just recommend an option and let us know if it's okay to start the process. There will be some, I know with the 2014, and a lot of it depends on what legal counsel feels they need. But for 2014, we have to go back to the member agencies to get some continuing resolutions. So that could be part of the process, but until we get legal counsel involved, we don't know exactly what will be needed from everyone.
Thank you, Ray. All right, let's go to directors. I see a hand up from Drew Tipton.
So I just have a quick question. How early in the process do we have to decide if we want to do the shortening by the year versus the overall savings?
Yeah,
and the only reason I'm asking that is because we're looking at a potential revenue shortfall from the move to Madison Lane. This could be a potential mechanism for making up for that shortfall.
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. We can decide that or 2 weeks before closing, 2 or 3 weeks before closing. So towards the end, right? So not until we lock in the interest rate, we can make that decision. So we don't have to make a decision anytime soon, because this process takes about 4 months.
Okay.
4 to 5 months.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. We'll go to Rob.
Thank you, John, for that presentation. And I just wanted to say I'm glad Ray is recommending option number 2. That is what I would like to recommend and see. I think that's the most best option for us right now. Anytime you can shorten the duration, that's a good thing. So that's what I would like to support.
Thank you, Rob. Any other questions or comments from directors before we go to the public? Patrick.
Yeah, just one comment to Director Tipton's question, and that's really just so you know, the issue we'll be talking about on some of the risks with moving forward on these agreements. We won't really know that until well after this bond has been decided. So even waiting until the bond is just about to be issued, which would be probably around the beginning of the year, we still won't actually have been relocated yet. That relocation probably won't happen until the spring. And the issue of whether we lose a lot of revenue or that creates a shortfall won't really be known probably till the middle of the fiscal year. We won't be certain on it. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to those items, but I just want to let you know that, we'll have to make this decision before we know those outcomes. But that's why we have operating reserves.
Exactly.
So, I think we can weather. We don't think it's going to be so significant that it's going to put us in dire straits. But we could have to either take cost saving measures or dip into those operating reserves temporarily until the next fiscal year when we can make adjustments.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go out to the public now, see if there's any public input on this item. We ask folks to use the raise hand function. See no hands up, we'll close the public comment portion and bring it back. So at this point, staff is looking for some direction in terms of process. I just want to share that we did have a conversation in EC about the timing of let's call it the credit check. It'll happen later in the process, just in case there is any major movement in the markets, reducing our risk of any outlay of unnecessarily of funds in order to get that done. So just wanted to share that as a question that came up and got answered during the EC process. But given that, is there any additional discussion as direction? I heard Director Collin mention favor for option 2. It's also the one that I'm leaning towards. I also heard some maintain the flexibility toward until we can decide further down till the end. But is there any additional input staff would like, I'm sorry, directors would like to provide to staff at this point?
Yeah, Director Phillips, I support number 2.
Okay, thank you. Then with that, we will go ahead. Ben, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, quick question is, what is the cost associated with each option to refinance or those bonds? Is one more expensive than the other? Option 1 and option 2?
No, there's no difference
So they're both the same.
Yeah, the only real difference is in the total savings with the life of the bond.
Yeah.
So the annual savings for the total savings about 1.2 million is shortening the bond by years about 1.4 million.
Got that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Jimenez. All right, seeing no other questions, I think we've got good direction. Anything in addition you need, Ray? Or do you want it more formal, I guess, is the other question.
Do I need a formal motion allowing us to proceed? I guess it's just the direction, right?
Yeah, and I think you can consider that direction received, given the
Okay.
conversation.
We will start the process, and we will keep the board informed as we need further actions and we have more information.
Great. Thank you, Ray, and thank you, John. We appreciate you helping us this evening and laying out a path forward for us.
Thank you.
At this point, we're going to go into our discussion on future meeting protocols. I do know that this evening the governor did sign some legislation, which was the Rivas bill. And so with that being on the table now, we'll kick it over to Patrick to share the latest.
Yeah, well, basically that bill extends the option during a declared emergency and specifically around COVID for elected bodies to retain the option to have remote meetings. I have, heard just anecdotally from a few of you, there is some at least have a desire to get back to live meetings. We've noticed many of the councils and others have started to move in that direction. The board, again, still has the full complement of options to consider, from hybrid meetings where members can participate remotely to, again, getting back to full live meetings. Of course, going forward, we still have the challenge of meeting spaces that may be restricted in head count. As we've said the last couple of meetings, Erica has acquired what's referred to as an OWL system. I believe Soledad has been successfully using that system as well as a lot of jurisdictions now. It's very low cost, very easy. It allows for remote public participation in meetings. It has a motion camera that follows the speakers and has multiple screens. And so it really allows us to have the public participate without overloading the room with too many bodies, which is always the concern right now. Even though we're all vaccinated, there's still concern of large crowds and density of people in rooms. So we can maintain that public access. We have been recommending that become a normal part of our business anyway going forward, even when we're after the pandemic, to encourage more public participation by not requiring them to drive down to Gonzales for meetings. But this does provide us an option to keep the room count down to help protect board members and staff during these live meetings. Eric is also looking into portable partitions that can be used for EC and or board meetings. That would allow some additional protection. The EC had asked that we begin to look into those systems. So I think we are in a position where we could go back to live meetings in October. So with that, I'm going to leave it up to the board to have that discussion. But we do have 3 options in front of us still. Back to regular live meetings with some head count limits in the building from the public. Hybrid meetings, which I think would be allowed under the new legislation to continue, where board members can participate remotely, not necessarily be required to open their living room to members of the public who want to participate from their home. And then continuing. And then the third option, obviously, is to continue with remote-based meetings as we're doing right now. So on a personal level, I would love to see all of you in person. I feel comfortable with the safety precautions that we could do that. But this would be a time for the board to deliberate on what you'd like to see going forward for October and on. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I want to turn to council and see if there's, given the passage of 361, anything in addition we should be aware of for this conversation, or did Patrick highlight it all pretty well?
Patrick covered it all pretty well.
Great. Thank you, Roy. All right. I'm going to turn to directors. I see a hand up from Director Rocha.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for the passage of that legislation, and I would hope that we remain on Zoom, or at least keep that as an option. We are I wouldn't say regional, but several cities participated in the board, and for the sake of when we need city employees to be present on the call, or just for us other council members that are not close enough to make those regular commutes, it just works a lot easier to have things on Zoom. I recognize that some people may prefer an in-person thing, so I mean, for me, I would prefer on Zoom, but if those who really, that's a sticking point for them and they don't want to be on Zoom anymore, I would say then we should really consider a hybrid option. But I would hate to see Zoom go all together. I really want to preserve that.
Thank you, Director Rocha. We'll go to Director Cromings.
So I will go along with whatever the board would like, but I will point out that we are heading into the winter months, and hopefully we will get a lot more rain and weather than we have had in the last year. And so my concern would be, given that here we are heading into October, November, December, and people would be having to drive that. I know you can hear my dog and it's probably annoying. Sorry about that. He is very up in my lap tonight. Sorry about that. But so I'd like everybody to take that into consideration as they're making this decision as well, given that we are being allowed to stay remotely.
Thank you,
Just
Director
got in
Cromings.
trouble. Sorry about that.
We'll go to Director Phillips next.
I wish I had my dog next to me. I just lost him, so I empathize with you. I just think I like it so much, even though I have to drive 20 miles to get there. I just think we bring so much more when we're all together and with the employees and staff and us. But I can see the issues with the other side of it too. So I push strongly that we start coming back together and do it right. But I think the hybrid might be the right approach for us, where we have the best of both worlds. So that's my thought.
Thank you, Director Phillips. I see a hand up from Director Rocha again.
Yeah, thank you, Director Phillips, for that. I also want to see the hybrid option, but if we were to go to an all in-person option, I'd like to have the conversation around what vaccination requirements are going to look like, and if we take it to, if we go in that direction. But I would much rather do hybrid. I think that it works for both entities, or both people that are, both groups of thinking, I should say. I'm sorry, I don't know where my brain's at today, but thank you. That's all.
All right. I just want to say, if we are doing in person in October, I've already called the costume of Hannibal Lecter in my glass box, so nobody can steal that one. I'm a fan right now of the hybrid concept, given the unknowns. We're very fortunate in terms of our rates right now in Monterey County being some of the lowest in the nation, the top 2%, with trend downward. But we know that last winter, as people gathered around the holidays, rates did go up. So, acknowledging the past and continuing to follow the direction of health officials in our county is important. So, I'm a fan of hybrid for those who feel comfortable doing that. I've done those meetings, as I've chaired meetings like that, and I think they've had a good flow to them. It doesn't get too chopped up, so I'm okay going in that direction. And seeing no additional hands up at this point, what I'm going to do is open it up to the public and see if we have any public input on this item. Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Any other thoughts from directors, or should we give the onus for making this decision to the EC as we track forward along with Patrick? Any thoughts on that, Ben?
Yeah, thank you. Same thing with the hybrid. I mean, with the OWL that we have that we utilize there in Soledad, it works out. There's often times where council members may not be able to show up. In one particular case, one ended up contracting COVID, and therefore they were still able to participate via the hybrid. So that would gives us a little flexibility, and also addresses some of the concerns regarding the current status of the issue with COVID now. So I would also be in favor of a hybrid at this point.
Thank you, Director
Thank
Jimenez.
you.
I see a hand up from Director Cullen.
I'll just echo that. I think given all the comments that I've made and for many obvious reasons, I would like to support the hybrid approach as well. I think most importantly for me, whatever we ultimately decide, is that we need to find a way to continue to allow the public to participate in a virtual fashion. Especially, and Director Rocha talked about this, where because we're a regional board and we have our constituents spread out, pretty big geographic region, it's a great way to allow them to be able to participate. So I would support that, the hybrid option, and allow us as board members and whatever we decide public-wise to participate in person.
Thank you, Director Cullen. Any additional input? Okay, seeing none. Patrick, you think you have a pretty good feel for the board's direction on this one?
I think so, but I do have a couple of questions. So I guess the first question is to the EC. What would be your preference for the October EC meeting? Do you want to meet in person? Do you want us to give our first attempt at hybrid? I'm not quite sure, and maybe Erica can speak to this with her through her clerks group, exactly how we run a hybrid. My concept would be that those of you participating remotely would be on a Zoom, basically a Zoom platform, projected on a screen or something, so that your presence is known in the meeting, and then the rest of you that choose to attend the meeting live, again, we would take those precautions. We'll look into, as Director Rocha asked, we would look into what type of vaccination requirements or that we would require. But I think with all that said, I don't know, Erica, if you have any questions related to how we run the hybrid meeting. I think we have enough direction to understand that. So, Erica, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I think the only thing would be we would have to figure out how to do the hybrid, and it's my understanding it would be a Zoom meeting, and whoever is participating through Zoom, and then we would go ahead and project that, like you said, for the people that are in person. We would use the OWL, so everything would connect, since the OWL connects to Zoom directly, and it's its own attendee per se. We can go ahead and do that. We could try for the EC if that's what the EC would like to do. I can start working on practicing and trying to figure out all the logistics of it next week. And we do have an extra week this month, so it'll give me some time to practice before the EC meeting.
Good timing.
That works. I'm happy to come in person and practice. I know typically when I've done it, I have my own laptop running so that I can see raised hands and everything else. So, happy to be the guinea pigs at EC on that and see if we can't figure out a good system before our full board meeting.
Absolutely.
Sounds
Better
good.
you than me, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, John.
I think that's a direction. I think we got good direction. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Then with that, we're going to go ahead and close this item. That was item number 9 on our agenda. We're moving to item 10, a resolution approving a lease with Republic Services of Salinas to provide space for the relocation of the Sunstreet transfer station recycling and household hazardous waste operations. Patrick.
All right. I will keep this fairly brief. It's a straightforward item. I'll give you a little overview of the lease itself. So, but before I start, I want to thank the board and everybody, and particularly the city of Salinas, Republic Services, and most importantly, our legal team and Michelle Sassano, who has done just such a stellar job helping me herd the cats to get to conclusion, which actually didn't happen until the final agreement till this morning. So in the package, you'll notice there was an agreement that was sent out with the original agenda on Saturday, and then a subsequent version because there were still a few outstanding items. We wanted the board to at least see the basic structure of the agreement, which was substantially done last week, but again, a few sticking points that we had to work through, and you'll see those in the red line version that was sent out with supplementals this morning, and then the final agreement that we're asking for you to consider tonight. So on a personal note, when I started here on June 23rd, 2008, I was handed this project, and that was the request of the city to the board that we figure out how to relocate Sunstreet to make way for future redevelopment in the LSL marketplace area. So as you know, we've been at this now for well over 13 years with lots of starts and stops and lots of options considered and then not considered. And so this is the culmination of really this board's 13 years worth of effort to get to a point where we can both assist the city and continue the excellent service in this community that our staff, you've heard from many tonight, really deserve that credit for establishing a customer service standard that I think is unparalleled in this region for our industry. And we get that every year with our surveys and our comments from the public that love the services we provide. So this is a great time to celebrate a little bit, but there are some decisions and discussions we have to have tonight around this. So the lease is fairly straightforward. This lease is tied directly to the City of Salinas's franchise agreement, which will be coming forward for public consideration at the council at the end of this month. So the timing for all these things are sort of tied together. The good news is we started this out with a letter of intent with Republic that define the agreements. Tonight, you're seeing two of those agreements that were part of that letter of intent approved a few months ago. And the second part of that was an MOU with the City of Salinas that in exchange for us agreeing to relocate and actually facilitating it by approving the lease tonight, that would trigger actions by the City of Salinas to do a few things that we, again, have been discussing for several months. Rescinding their notice of intent to withdraw and equalizing green waste rates being the two primary issues that have been under discussion for the last few years. So that's good news. The city approved or counter approved that MOU at their meeting on Tuesday night. So that is now in place, and pending approval of the lease, then the obligations under that MOU would kick in for both the city and the authority to take certain actions to facilitate that relocation. So the lease is, again, as I said, tied directly to the city's pending new franchise agreement. That agreement is going to be a 15-year agreement with 2 5-year extensions. So our initial lease term is 15 years. And if additional extensions are granted, that lease could be extended for a period of up to a total of 25 years. If for some reason that agreement were not to be executed within, I believe it's 45 days of our execution of the lease, then the lease would just automatically terminate. So it is tied to the city's final approval of that agreement when it comes forward in a couple of weeks. It's a basic lease, has all the standard provisions in it. We're going to be provided a little over an acre of space. There's already an existing building there that actually housed the authority's first household hazardous waste facility back in the late 90s after formation. So it'd be reoccupying that building. What comes with the lease are also some landlord improvements that have been negotiated into the agreement, asphalting the area and making a solid working surface for us, which will create an all-weather area without tracking mud in and out of the facility, like we do at Sunstreet for our back areas. It also provides for some improvements, a budget for improvements on the household hazardous waste building. Installation of a drive-through awning pole barn area in front of the building to allow us to receive household hazardous waste during inclement weather, and also to provide shade for workers during heat spells. Some additional storage space attached to the building with covering on it, and some general maintenance on the building. It's a little, has some cosmetic stuff that needs to be taken care of, repairing holes and siding on the steel building and a few things like that. So all in all, we'll end up with a facility that will allow us to relocate all of our recycling operations, or we call it the front end operations. The stuff you see at Sunstreet when you go in there, there's a lot of recycling that happens at the front end. This is actually a bigger space than we have at Sunstreet for those operations. So would allow us to move most of our staff that are currently doing that over to that facility, and to reestablish our household hazardous waste facility at that location. So the lease would be approximately $194,000 a year, starting in the first year with regular cost of living adjustments tied to index. And there's some other things in the background that would happen, obviously, with Republic operating the internal transfer station. We've requested that they, beyond just the recycling that we're doing, which is all funded through our AB 939 fees, we've asked that they continue to segregate and separate the types of materials we do at Sunstreet, like construction and demolition material, clean wood, concrete, and a few of those other items. They've agreed to include all those same services that we provide at Sunstreet at Madison Lane on top of what we will be doing in the lease space. So with that, I'll stop for a moment and see if there's any questions we have. Oh, I do want to add one thing. So obviously there are a few termination clauses we've discussed in the agreement to make sure we're protected if certain things happen. And again, one of the big ones coming up will be the city approving that franchise agreement. Assuming that happens, then the lease remains in effect. And Republic has indicated right now that those landlord improvements will probably be done sometime in the early spring, late February, March. And once they give us the notice of completion of those landlord improvements, we have 60 days to relocate our operations there. So that's the timing. I know people will be asking about timing. So right now we're tentatively projecting May as the relocation period. But there may be work that happens in advance of that. But again, it's all tied to Republic completing those landlord tenant improvements. So that would be the timing for our relocation, would be very early spring of 2022. So I'll open it up for comments and questions.
Thank you, Patrick. Questions or comments from directors? Seeing none, I'm going to go to the public, see if we have any public input on this item. Seeing no public hands raised, I'm going to bring it back to the directors for any comments or action. I see a hand up from Mayor Craig.
Yeah, I just want to say first and foremost that, when I was elected in January, I recognized stepping off of city council for a couple of years and then coming back as the mayor, I was completely exasperated that this deal had not been done at that point, particularly because in 2018, we put a 1-year time clock on, trying to get Sunstreet closed. So I just want to commend Patrick for his efforts and his commitment to working with our new city manager and particularly with our assistant city manager, Jim Pia, and really recognizing that, you know, new blood and new electeds and new fresh pairs of eyes really prioritized this to, you know, to get it past the finish line. So just wanted to say thank you to this board for your patience. Recognize that the city of Salinas has not always been an all-star player on the team, and really understand that we're thrilled to move forward in trying to get, you know, Sunstreet out of the center of our town. So very much appreciate your cooperation. Happy to move the item.
Got a motion from
Second.
Mayor Craig in a couple seconds there. I'm going to take the second from, I think that was Cromings. Did I hear you, Christy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I have a couple additional hands up. So before we go to a roll call vote, I'm going to go to Director Rocha.
I just want to echo the remarks of my mayor in thanking the authority for your collaborative effort on this. I joined the council, and this was at the same time as her, and not at the same time, but this last cycle. And this was something that was heavily discussed by many people in my community as the unsolvable project. And we got together and we really wanted to make it work. But we knew that a part of that was having a strong relationship with the authority, a collaborative relationship with the authority, focusing on a shared governance process. And I could say we've really worked hard, and we could see how hard you all have worked as well. So I appreciate your collaborative effort. I appreciate your partnerships on this. And this is going to be a great thing for our city. And it's the significance behind it is more than I can really explain with words. The impact it's going to have on the LSAW community, the positive impact. I would really like to see this move forward. And I thank everyone who played a part in getting us to the point where we are now. So I'm glad to support it.
Thank you, Director Roach. I'm going to go to Director Phillips next.
Well, you know, I got to say, I mean, this is where we've ended up into my district out there in the Bronda. And I think it's a good resolution. But we got to look at the impact on our community out there. And as you and I talked, Chris, we got to address the issues of how much more traffic we're going to have there, other things there we have to address. But I think this has been a good solution for the county and Monterey coming together to find a location. But it was the county that stepped up and said, this is the location that we can live with. And I think it's a good resolution for all of us. So thank you.
Thanks, Director Phillips. I'm going to go to Director Cromings next.
Thank you, Chris. I want to thank Chris and Rob and Patrick for working with me on this as Mayor Gunter passed away and I took over the reins on this. I thank you so much for working with me to come up with some great solutions. And I agree with Supervisor Phillips that we do need to address those concerns because this is my district too. So, you know, he and I share quite a bit of a district together here, and Baranda butts up against my district. So we need to address those issues. But I also want to thank Mayor Craig and Anthony for coming on board and helping us get this over that threshold to completion. Thank you all.
Thank you, VP Cromings. Any other directors at this point? Okay, I just wanted to share a couple words. I mean, obviously this is something that's been a long time in the making, and I feel very honored to be president as we push this across the finish line. But it's not a real finish line. And I think that's the message that I hear from Director Phillips, and a commitment that I'm making here in public on a recorded session, that we know that there's going to be additional needs, additional support in the form of partnership. And I think with the leadership that we have at the county, with the leadership we have at the city, as well as with all of our partner agencies. That is something I'm proud that we've put forward in the last couple of years with all of the new electeds, as Mayor Craig spoke about. And so I appreciate everybody and helping us get to this point, but know that the work's not done. We're going to have more trials in front of us to make sure that this project is a success, not just for the agency, not just for the city, the county, but for the community that we're heading into. And so that's my commitment, to continue to push for those efforts, knowing that this is the beginning of a new sort of relationship that is going to need to be fostered. And with that, I do want to give a huge shout out to past President Cullen, who really set this up and teed it up for me to be able to help push this over the finish line with the help of Patrick. I know we've had some long conversations, some short conversations, some long tempers, some short tempers. It's been fun. But you know what makes me proud is that we're all sitting here together, pushing in the same direction once again. And so thank you for your partnership and for your continued collaboration. And with that, I'm going to go back to Supervisor Phillips one more time.
Yeah, I do think as we move forward in this, we're going to have to reach out to our community and make sure we alleviate their concerns. I was talking to Keith Day today extensively about something else, and we got on this. And I drove out there today because he was concerned about parking on Madison Lane and people parking there, whether somewhere we have parking signs, somewhere where we don't. But we have to do some work, and as I mentioned to you, Supervisor, we got to do some work about really getting behind doing the road that we talked about off of Rossi into there, because without that, I'm going to have a hard time selling it to our community to buy into this. When you got, especially the day haulers all coming in there with everything else. So I think between all of us, and I frankly, I called up Todd Buck at TAMSI to tell him where we're moving forward. And this was a regional project that I saw with Salinas and the county and the business community and us and the Republic all working together to make sure. Because, you know, frankly, and a lot of people don't know the Bronda area that may be on this call, but it's an isolated area. You got one road going in there, and it's off the worst intersection we have in the county, which is Laurel. And we used to have two accesses into Bronda. And now we have one access after it closed off 40 years ago, the access on Market. And from a safety, it's a real concern. But I think this may well be a win-win for everybody, where we all get behind a process. And that's what I was talking to Keith Day and UPS and some of the other businesses that are out there. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Phillips. And with that comment on a win-win, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a roll call vote.
Director Craig?
Yes.
Director Collin?
Aye.
Director Jimenez?
Affirm.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
Director Rocha?
Yes.
Director Silva?
Aye.
Alternate Vice President Tipton?
Aye.
Vice President Cromings?
Absolutely, yes.
And President Lopez?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. With that, we're going to head into a partner item here. Item 11, a resolution approving a master transportation service agreement with Republic. Patrick.
All right. I'm going to start with a few opening comments, and then we're going to do just a very short 3-slide PowerPoint and discuss a few things. So as one of the companion agreements to the letter of intent we executed with Republic was the issue around maintaining and continuing to use the authority's existing transportation and transfer fleet. And as you know, we have 8 transfer trucks drivers, all part of the Sunstreet operations, as well as the Cologne Road operation, but the majority of them are assigned and working at the Sunstreet facility. So obviously one of our options and discussions here was to maintain that fleet, right? To be able to utilize as many of our Sunstreet employees as possible at the Sunstreet operation. So this is sort of separate from the recycling area and things that are run through our AB 939 programs, which we just approved. This is actually continuing to operate as basically a trucking company. So the way the structure works at Madison, Republic Services is going to maintain the internal operations. They're going to be loading garbage, managing the internal operations of the transfer station. Then under this agreement, we would have the option to provide transfer services for MSW, or municipal solid waste, and continue to use our fleet, continue to employ those drivers that are doing that work for us now. So the tricky part about this is a couple of things, and I'll start with the front end. So the City of Salinas is currently completing negotiations on a franchise agreement, and the Public Services is actually able to provide those transport services at a lower cost with private sector haulers than the authority drivers. So in order to make this contract work and to retain our employment, we either would have to continue to subsidize, which City of Salinas, which we don't want to do, that's not provided for in the JPA, or we would have to consider lowering our tipping fee so that their current negotiated rates would not be impacted by the higher transportation fee. So as we begin this discussion in the PowerPoint, you'll see one provision of this agreement is that the board would be agreeing for the 22-23 fiscal year that we would lower our tipping fee from $68.50 to $64.75. That would provide an equivalent offset for our higher transportation rates, allow us to continue to employ those employees and utilize existing assets that we have on hand for Sunstreet. And to avoid subsidy, this would be a bonus for all member agencies, because we would do this across the board. We would lower our tipping fee effective in 22-23, and that would benefit the rest of the agencies as well. And it would provide the city with without any additional impact on their already negotiated rates. So that's sort of the front end of this discussion. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the pros and cons of this agreement. So if you can turn to the next slide, please. So we'll start with just a quick overview. We've heard this before. This is not new information, but Republic is a private company, and you'll see the rates that are highlighted in green represent privately owned and or operated facilities. So you can see the rates that they're proposing for, and this is just MSW, but there would be similar rates for green waste and other things that are self-haul. These again are self-hauler rates for people that are, again, as John says, day haulers, people that are coming in to use the facility from the private sector. So you can see the municipal rates in the region. We are one of the lower rates in the region for a municipal solid waste agency. But again, the municipal rates typically are lower than most of the private sector rates in our region. So their rates are not inconsistent with private sector operated facilities. So next slide, please. So one of the challenges is when we move from the way the authority charges a self-hauler to the way Republic charges a self-hauler, there is going to be some significant rate changes. Again, I'm not passing judgment here. This is just the difference between a typical municipal operation that charges rates based on a system cost versus private companies that typically operate their facilities sort of as a merchant standalone facility. And it's just the way the business is run. So in this example you're seeing here, this is a typical, what we would call a minimum charge load. And that is a standard size pickup, 6.5 foot long bed, is typically around just a little over 2 cubic yards if it's filled up right to the top of the bed. Now for us, that would be a minimum charge. We assume that that's typically around a 1/4 ton load. So it's a quarter of our $68.50, $17. So this is tied to our actual tipping fee, our base tonnage rate. On a cubic yardage basis, you can see their minimum charge of $25 is basically something that's less than a cubic yard. And then it goes up from there. $39 is their cubic yard charge. And if that pickup is filled to the top of the bed all the way to the end, it's going to be approximately $78. So our typical minimum charge customer coming in can see a pretty wide range of charges for that similar load. So if we go to the next slide. So we took a look at this. So obviously, we know that when there's a significant change in how rates are assessed to our self-haulers, it is going to have a behavioral change. Some customers will choose to go to Johnson Canyon because our base rates, our minimum charge rates, are the lowest in the region. That will not hurt us financially. That's a good thing. I mean, if they don't want to come to Madison to use or to pay for MSW rates, but they end up at Johnson, we still get the revenue, and that's fine. Our services that we're providing under the lease and the recycling area, those are all paid by our 939 fees. Nothing to do with tipping fees. We still anticipate we're going to get a lot of customers over the course of the first year coming back to use those services. But this is really about the risk associated with authority revenue. So under the transportation agreement, we've modeled, or Ray has modeled 3 different scenarios. So a customer coming there, if they're not happy with paying the higher rate, and again, it can vary from just paying a few dollars more for a small load to a bit more if it's a significantly full load. If the customers have really two legal choices, they can go to us and down at Gonzales, or they can choose to go over to Marina and use their services, which are slightly higher, but geographically it may be cheaper for someone in the north part of Salinas to drive there. People in the south part of Salinas and West Salinas, easier to go down to Gonzales. So we don't think the difference between ours and the district's rates will drive people to make big decisions. And I think over time, and we've had this discussion with Republic, over time, we believe that customers will come back to the facility simply for convenience. They're not going to want to drive for 20 minutes, a half hour to get to one of the other facilities. They'll come back, or the positive side, they may choose to recycle more, right? Because we have a lot of free recycling at this new facility that's going to, and we think it'll be more convenient for people to do that. And so maybe even it may have an effect of reducing waste disposal from our self-haulers. So under the models, we looked at the transport agreement. Now, if we lost 25% of our revenue, and again, these are customers that choose to go to Monterey Regional's facility. So if we lost 25% of our revenue, we're still going to end up with about $500,000 in surplus, because this whole move to Madison will save the agency some money. In fact, if everybody came back and all of the garbage came to Madison, we'd actually have well over $1 million in excess surplus, because those are the savings from the change in our system in Salinas. But once we get down to losing 50% of our self-haul revenue, then our overall budget starts to get into the negative. So again, 141,000, we can manage that kind of a loss just through expense, tightening our belt a bit harder in the year. So we could get down to close to 50% and we'd be okay. We're not sure we don't think we're going to lose 50% of our self-haul revenue, but we have to be honest about the possibilities that customers will have some rate shock in the beginning. And So when we approve that agreement, our transportation rate will be $15.55 a ton for our trucking services. We will, again, as I explained earlier, we'll lower our tipping fee to $64.75 for all member agencies. So that's a benefit for the rest of you. And there's a potential, and this is just a worst case scenario, that we could have to eliminate up to 3 positions as a result of this change. So this is coming one way or the other. There is going to have to be some minor reduction in staff. Through attrition and some other things we know may be coming in the next several months, we may be able to reduce that number by some. I can't give you an exact number because we don't know. There's retirements and other folks that may open up some positions to allow us to move people in, but there is the potential in the worst case scenario that when we do this agreement, it saves a lot of jobs, but we still end up losing up to 3 positions as a result of this change in our business plan. The other option the board can consider is we don't get into the transportation business. So tonight is a decision about, do we execute this agreement or do we not get into the transportation business, or we get out of the transportation business? It provides a little better revenue projection, meaning we can absorb a bit more of a loss in revenue if, again, customers choose to go someplace else other than an authority facility. It could be Marina, it could be Buena Vista Landfill in Santa Cruz County, it could be the John Smith Landfill in San Benito County. There are other options for customers. So if they choose to do that and the revenue leaves our system, if we're not in the transport business, then there is less of a revenue risk. And it also means we leave our tipping fee at $68.50 because we're not offsetting that lower rate for everybody. So that less risky on the revenue side, but as you can see in the next section of that column, it does result in a much larger potential for reduction in staff because we're not providing transport services. So really tonight, the decision on this agreement, and I'll go through a few of the general parameters, but I think I've covered most of them. It's a very basic agreement, is there's a little more risk when we sign this agreement, but it does preserve most of the jobs from Sunstreet. If we do not execute this agreement tonight, it's a little less risky on the revenue side, but it does result in a much larger reduction in staffing, or at least potential for reduction. And again, I say that because we think that we may be able to juggle some staff around with attrition and things that might happen in the next 6 months and reduce those numbers further. But in either case, this is really, I think, the crux of the decision tonight is this slide right here. And just recognizing that there will likely be some migration of self-haul revenue out of our system with this relocation. So with that, I'll open it up for questions and discussion.
Questions from directors? I know it's been a long night, so appreciate you all sticking it out with us. All right, seeing none, let's take it out for public comment. Any public input on this item? I see a hand up from Felix Huerta. Felix, we'll go ahead and give you the ability to unmute yourself. And as we've done tonight, we'll give you 2 minutes to share your comments with us. Please self-regulate on that. You should now have the ability to unmute yourself. Felix, the floor is yours.
I'm about to, yes. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My only real question has to do with the equipment that the operators drive. If we were to look at the no transportation option, how many pieces of equipment are we talking about? And besides the employees, what would happen to those pieces of equipment that they're using to haul right now? And again, the drastic impact to the size of the unit, losing 6 people versus 3, and looking at options, I think the employees have been very concerned about that from the very beginning. And again, I'm coming onto this new, but at the same time, I'm just raising the concerns that I've been asked to raise.
Thank you, Felix. Any other public at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion, bring it back, and we'll turn and see if Patrick or Ray want to take on the question of the equipment that was raised by the public by Felix.
Well, the likelihood is we would liquidate at least 6 trucks. We still have a need for transfers for South County operations and potentially in the future for movement of other materials. But in essence, we'd be looking at least 6 of those trucks and trailers potentially being liquidated and sold on the market, unless we can find another trucking opportunity for the authority, which is something we could look at. But internally, we wouldn't have a need for them, so we would probably look to liquidate those.
Okay, any additional comments from directors at this point? Or direction?
I'd like to move approval of the item.
Which option, the transport or the no transport?
Oh, the transportation agreement. I'd like to move approval of the transportation agreement.
Okay, so
I'll
the
second
first
that.
option, so we got a motion and a second for, just want to confirm option 1, which would be the left-hand column here with transport solid waste only. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm looking to the motion maker on that.
I believe so. Unless I'm confused, and I would ask my colleagues from Salinas to. I believe that's.
Yes, that would be the motion.
Yeah, I believe.
Okay.
Wait a minute here.
Okay. And the second stands, Director Collin?
Yeah, it does. And just
Okay.
and also reiterating that is staff's recommendation as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. I appreciate it. For a second, I got confused. I appreciate that, Rob.
Perfect. All right. I see a hand up from Mayor Craig, Director Mayor Craig.
Yeah, I just had a question, and I'm certainly happy to support the motion that's been made. But the transport rate, the $15.55 transport rate, I'm wondering, it's my understanding that we've sort of been able to like spread these rates out across the entire authority and the jurisdiction of the authority. But I'm curious, the Halone Road hauling, the transport for Halone Road, comparatively, I think the difference between Halone Road and Johnson Canyon is much larger. I'm wondering are we separating out the transport rate for that particular hauling as well? For that particular transport as well? Is it something that we're addressing separately? It's interesting to me that there's a transport rate figure for Salinas, but yet there's no transport rate for the Halone Road transport.
Actually, there is the surcharge that we charge at Sunstreet is also charged at King City.
Sorry, Director Craig, can we ask you to mute? We're still getting that reverb.
Okay.
Thank you. Go for it, Ray.
We currently do charge a transportation surcharge at both Sunstreet and Halone Road. So those are separate from this contract. The $15.55 is just our cost of transporting out of Madison Lane with Halone, and Halone Road has a separate rate. Does that answer your
Follow up on
question?
that, Director Craig?
Let me add some clarity. At Halone Road, the transportation surcharge includes us loading the trucks. So that's the cost of the loading as well as the truck and trailer and transport. This is trucking only. Republic Services will load the trucks because they control the internal operations of the transfer station. So this is just a trucking only rate.
Director Craig?
No, that's fine. I'm more conscientious of the double audio that I have going on, but I appreciate the response, and I will lower my hand. Apologies. Sorry.
All right. And with that, we do have a motion from Director Rocha, second from Director Collin. Seeing no additional hands up at this point, Eric, I'm going to ask you to take us through a roll call vote.
Director Craig?
Yep.
Director Collin?
Aye.
Director Jimenez?
Yes.
Director Phillips,
Aye.
Director Rocha,
Yes.
Director Silva,
Yes.
Alternate Vice President Tipton,
Yes.
Vice President Cromings,
Yes.
and President Lopez.
Yes, motion carries. With that, we've concluded item 11, and we're going to go ahead and ask Patrick to take us through the agenda items view ahead schedule at this time.
You guys just made my night, so I
And it was unanimous too. So
yeah. On behalf of the staff, I thank you. This has been a longer haul than any of you can imagine, except for maybe Rob and Liz, who've been here since the beginning.
Unintended, right?
Yes, long haul. Yeah, long short haul. All right, so for October, we have our typical October items, some recognitions, updates from resource recovery, and we expect to have our annual report completed and ready for presentation at that meeting. We're also going to begin the discussion about getting back into strategic planning. So we'll be coming in and just having a general discussion with the board of how you'd like to do strategic planning. We're already starting to collect some facilitator names and ideas. Probably we'll be releasing some kind of a proposal, but we'll talk about that process with the EC and with the full board in October. Don't know if we'll have a whole lot on item 10 or 11. Hopefully item 11 will be simply a transmittal of the city's notice, rescinding their notice. We can share that with the board hopefully in October, and then we'll just keep you updated on the transportate or the relocation project. There'll be a lot of activity going on, and we'll just keep you up to date on that. Construction, Republic's efforts to get the site ready for us, timing and those kind of things. So we'll definitely continue to come back and provide periodic updates on that project as it goes along, so you know when it's going to happen. We'll also be starting the GM evaluation in October, and I'm not sure we'll have real property. That's a placeholder right now, but we may have some discussions down the road on Sunstreet. But we have, I think that's probably premature at this point, but if something does come up that we want to discuss, we'll keep that placeholder there just in case. So with that, I would just ask if there's anything you would like to add to the agenda, delete, modify, or bring back. We'll be more than happy to include that.
Any input from directors? We'll quickly go to the public, see if there's any public input. See no hands up, we'll bring it back. Consider this item received. Thank you, Patrick. I see council has unmuted. Roy, did you have something for us?
Oh, no, we're good. I was just going to tell everybody thank you.
See, I caught you. Actually, I had one last thank you on my agenda for tonight. So before we go, one of the unsung heroes in this thing is Roy, who stepped in. We brought his firm on not long ago, and they have made a difference in helping to get these negotiations done. So as we wrap tonight, Roy, I want to thank you and your team. Michelle, you guys have been incredible helping us navigate this, and we appreciate all the effort that you've put in, and we know you will continue to put in. So I just want to appreciate you and your firm and all that you've done for us to help get us to this point where we're having some unanimous votes on great movements forward in terms of where we've been. So thank you, Roy. Thank you, Michelle.
Always glad to help.
All right, then with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all. We will see you very soon.
Right.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Peace.
Good night, everybody. Stay safe.
Y'all.
Good night.